I smoothed the silk of my blouse, my fingers brushing over the subtle sheen as I sat at the far end of the long mahogany table. The soft hum of the restaurant mixed with the clink of glasses, and through the tall window, the city lights shimmered like a promise I'd once thought impossible. My phone buzzed beside my plate, its vibration echoing my pulse, and I resisted the urge to check it. Not yet. Across the table, my sister, Emily, laughed, light, airy, and infuriatingly confident, exactly the way she had when she stole everything from me, starting with that one seat at my own high school graduation. Her fiancé, Thomas, sat beside her, charming and oblivious, eyes glinting as if the world had always been handed to him. I forced a smile, folding my hands over my wine glass, tasting the tension as sharply as the red on my tongue. No one knew what I had built in the years since that betrayal, how I had quietly carved out my own life, far from their assumptions. They thought I was struggling just like they always assumed I would. They had no idea I had taken control. My thoughts flickered between pride and irony. Here I was, decades later, sitting opposite the woman who had once claimed my place, yet it was I who held the power now. A subtle thrill ran through me as I imagined what would happen when the truth finally landed, heavier than any glass of wine. The phone buzzed again, insistently. A message from an unexpected source. My heart skipped. The past was knocking, and this time, I was ready to answer. It had all started years ago, in the chaos of our parents' sunlit living room. I was 17, nervous, and excited for the spring scholarship ceremony at my high school. I remember my hair perfectly straightened, my pale blue dress pressed, my hands trembling as I clutched the invitation. Emily, of course, arrived late, her designer shoes clicking against the hardwood, and with that signature smirk, she slid into the seat right beside me. The seat I had reserved, the one my name had been written next to, the one I had earned. "Oops, sorry," she had said with mock innocence, as if the seat had magically called her name. And my parents, caught between amusement and indifference, didn't intervene. I froze, my chest tightening, a lump lodged stubbornly in my throat. It wasn't just a seat. It was recognition, the first real step toward my independence, and she had taken it effortlessly, with all the grace I lacked in my own family's eyes. I felt small, dismissed, invisible. My hands shook as I sank into the next chair, the fabric of my dress wrinkling beneath me. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding, a staccato rhythm of anger and humiliation. Every eye that turned my way seemed to whisper, "She's not enough. She'll never be enough." It was then that Grandma Margaret, my safe harbor in a sea of favoritism, slid a small envelope into my hand. Her calloused fingers squeezed mine briefly, grounding me. "You don't need a seat to make your mark, darling," she whispered, her voice soft yet unyielding. "The world will notice you, but only if you make it notice. Don't wait for anyone to give you space." That tiny envelope contained a check and a note. Invest in yourself, not in their approval. The irony wasn't lost on me. Emily had everything handed to her, while I had to fight for every inch. But as I looked around at the proud faces distracted by my sister's antics, I made a decision. I would step away from their assumptions. I would carve my own path, one no one could trespass upon. It was terrifying, yes, but the fire inside me had ignited. That day, I learned the bitter truth. Life doesn't always reward fairness, but it rewards persistence. And persistence, I decided, was mine in abundance. I left the ceremony with my head high, clutching that envelope like a talisman, the sting of betrayal fueling a resolve that would guide every choice I made in the years to come. Leaving home that summer felt like stepping off a cliff. I moved to Chicago with nothing but a suitcase, Grandma Margaret's envelope tucked deep inside my purse, and a stubborn determination I couldn't explain. Every morning, I wore my resolve like armor, brushing my hair, straightening my crisp blouses, and telling myself that this time I would be the one choosing her seat, not anyone else. I found a tiny internship at a marketing firm, the kind where coffee runs and late nights were expected more than recognition. My mentor, Julia Henderson, a powerhouse in her mid-40s with silver streaks framing her face, immediately saw something in me. She said, "Don't let anyone make you small. Emily, your name will carry weight, but only if you refuse to be invisible." Those words became my mantra. The early days were brutal. I worked 12-hour nights, learning how to craft pitches, negotiate contracts, and navigate the subtle politics of a world dominated by confidence, wealth, and connections I didn't have. There were times I doubted myself, hours when I'd stare at the ceiling of my tiny studio apartment, wondering if my sister's effortless charm would always win over my quiet diligence. But every setback became a lesson. A failed pitch taught me patience, a dismissive client taught me poise, and a long commute taught me endurance. Slowly, my persistence began to pay off. My first big client, a boutique startup that trusted me with their entire branding, was a revelation. The thrill of seeing my name credited, my ideas celebrated, ignited a spark that refused to die. Soon, I was consulting full-time, my savings growing, and the quiet confidence in my own abilities replacing the fear that had once dominated me. I learned to celebrate victories privately, posting modest updates on social media, never flaunting my success to the family who had laughed at my ambition. I redecorated my apartment with little touches of elegance, books I adored, framed photographs of trips I'd earned through my work, and subtle pieces of art that reminded me how far I had come. Along the way, I met Thomas, or rather, met him years later through a networking event for my clients. I didn't know then he would later become Emily's fiancé, but the irony of life's timing wasn't lost on me when I finally pieced it together. That knowledge made me pause, but it also reminded me that the world had a way of balancing itself. By the time my family expected me to be struggling, I had built an empire in miniature, respected by colleagues, quietly wealthy, and armed with a confidence no one could dismiss. Emily still had her charm, but I had something stronger, the unshakable knowledge that I had earned everything with my own hands. And in those moments of quiet triumph, sipping late-night coffee while the city slept, I realized the most powerful victories were not the ones others could see. They were the ones I carried silently, a constant reminder that the girl who had lost her seat had found the whole table. The evening had been planned under the guise of a casual family dinner at a trendy rooftop restaurant, with city lights painting everything in gold and silver. Emily had invited me, or rather, she had assumed I wouldn't come. She didn't know I was already there, seated discreetly at a corner table in a tailored navy dress, the soft shimmer of my jewelry catching the ambient light. As they arrived, I watched her eyes search for me, oblivious to the fact that I'd been following the story of their lives from afar for years. Her fiancé, Thomas, walked beside her, handsome and confident, carrying that same smug air I remembered from long ago. My parents trailed behind, muttering polite hellos, and the anticipation in the air made my pulse quicken. I allowed a slow smile to play across my lips as I rose to greet them, letting my presence fill the space. The smell of my perfume, a subtle blend of jasmine and sandalwood, wafted as I approached, a sensory signature of the woman they had never fully acknowledged. Emily froze mid-step, her fork still poised in the air, and Thomas blinked in surprise, an unreadable expression flashing across his face. "Emily," I said softly, but the power in my voice carried across the table. "Thomas." My words were casual, almost conversational, but the weight behind them made the room shift. They took in my appearance, my posture, the quiet elegance of the setting. Every detail screamed success. The designer chair I'd reserved in advance, the subtle notes of opulence, hand-picked flowers, my own curated playlist in the background, and even the discreet logo of the consulting firm I now owned embossed on the menu holders. "I see you've grown," my mother murmured, her tone a mixture of surprise and guilt. My father simply cleared his throat, eyes flicking between me and Emily, who still hadn't moved. I let them absorb it. The silence stretched, rich with tension. Then I spoke again. "For those wondering, I'm no longer the struggling girl you assumed I'd be. I run my own firm now with clients across the country. My net worth has tripled what you probably imagined, and yes, everything I have I earn myself." Emily's hand trembled as she set her fork down. You're kidding. I shook my head, letting a faint smile curl my lips. Not at all. And in case anyone thinks this is just luck, let me assure you, it's persistence, discipline, and refusing to wait for someone else to hand me what's mine. My eyes met Thomas's, steady and unflinching. It's amazing what a little determination can do. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. Emily's smugness dissolved into something I almost pitied, shock, guilt, and disbelief mingling on her face. My parents shifted in their seats, realizing the extent of their underestimation. Then, finally, I added the detail that would land hardest. Oh, and Thomas, you might want to reconsider which alliances you're making. The implication was sharp, unspoken. The life she thought was secured was never beyond my reach. The past, the stolen seat, the assumptions of failure, it all came full circle, and I was standing taller than I ever had before. No one spoke for a moment, the hum of the city below echoing our tension. I let them linger in that space, letting the weight of my journey, my accomplishments, and my quiet vengeance sink in fully. The girl who had been pushed aside, the one who had left that long-ago graduation ceremony humiliated and small, was gone. In her place stood a woman who had quietly taken her own seat, and then some. The air in the restaurant had shifted. I could feel it like a current running through the table. Emily's mouth opened and closed as if words were trapped, her usual confidence gone. My parents were uneasy, shuffling in their seats, caught between admiration and the realization that their assumptions had been shattered. Thomas, meanwhile, kept his eyes on me, curiosity and a hint of caution in his gaze. I had the upper hand now, and I intended to use it wisely. I leaned back slightly, letting my voice carry warmth and authority. I'm willing to help, but it comes with conditions, I said, measuring each word. The pause that followed was intentional, letting the weight of my presence fill the room. Emily, you need to stop underestimating everyone, including yourself. Your future, what you're building, can't rely on someone else to carry it. And Thomas, you need to recognize that loyalty is earned, not assumed. My parents shifted uneasily. And you, I continued, eyes softening slightly, need to respect my choices, my independence, and the fact that I am no longer the girl you thought you knew. I love you both, but enabling old patterns is no longer acceptable. I outlined the expectations with clarity, each condition a blend of accountability and opportunity. Emily needed to focus on her own career and ambitions rather than living in a shadow of privilege. Thomas needed to understand that charm could only get him so far without integrity. My parents needed to acknowledge the women we had all become, not the children they once expected us to remain. The subtle tension in the room was replaced with an electric energy, one that hinted at transformation. I wasn't threatening anyone. I was guiding them. My presence alone was enough to enforce change. You have a choice, I said, letting the words land. You can grow, or you can resist. But if you choose to stay in the past, you will be left behind. I won't allow anyone to derail my life or the lives I care about. This is my line. Emily swallowed hard, finally meeting my eyes. There was a flicker of understanding, maybe even regret, in her expression. Thomas nodded slowly, as though processing a truth he had never been forced to confront before. My parents were quiet, their earlier pride replaced with reflection. It was a moment of clarity for all of us. Power had shifted, yes, but not into arrogance or cruelty. It was a power tempered with wisdom, grown from years of struggle, patience, and self-belief. I could see the recognition dawning in their faces, that the little girl they overlooked had become someone unstoppable, someone who would no longer accept injustice or manipulation. And in that realization, I felt a quiet satisfaction. Not revenge, not malice, just the calm, unshakable authority of someone who had fought, who had endured, and who had risen. The days and weeks that followed the dinner were quietly transformative. Emily began to shift, small steps at first, but meaningful. She enrolled in a management course she had always joked about ignoring, and for the first time, I saw her apply herself without comparing herself to anyone else. Thomas started attending meetings with me when invited, observing the work ethic I had cultivated over years of quiet persistence. Even my parents began to ask questions, not out of judgment, but out of genuine curiosity, slowly recognizing the women we had become. One evening, as I sat on my balcony overlooking the city skyline, I held Grandma Margaret's envelope in my hand. The paper had yellowed slightly with age, but the words she had written were as sharp as the day I first read them. Invest in yourself, not in their approval. I traced the edges with my fingers and smiled, realizing that the gift she had given me went far beyond the money. It was the lesson that shaped my life, my independence, and my ability to claim my own space. I reflected on how far I had come. The girl who once lost a seat at a high school ceremony had learned to take far more than a seat. She had taken her own future, her own confidence, and yes, even subtly claimed her sister's fiancé in a way that corrected old imbalances without malice. It wasn't about revenge. It was about justice, growth, and empowerment. The city lights glittered, a mirror to the life I had built, hard-earned, elegant, unstoppable. I had learned that strength wasn't loud. It was measured, quiet, and deeply satisfying. The relationships I valued now were those rooted in respect, honesty, and mutual growth. And I had learned to protect that circle fiercely. I leaned back, the cool night air brushing my skin, and allowed a deep breath of satisfaction. Life had a way of balancing itself, I realized, but only if you were willing to fight for your own place at the table. I had done that and more. And with a soft, serene smile, I whispered to myself, almost as if Grandma Margaret were beside me. Never underestimate the girl who quietly takes her own seat, because she will take the whole table if she must. Bottom of form.